Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Cambridge Union Society. 61 years ago to this day, James Baldwin addressed this here chamber in a condemnation of hate, to assert that it is a terrible thing for an entire population to surrender to the notion that 1/9 of its population is beneath them. My name is Christopher Lord. I'm president of the Cambridge Union, and it is a pleasure to commemorate this debate as this building turns 160 and the society turns 211. We're joined today by Undiscovered Country and Da Vinci Life Skills for this showing of The Missing Piece. And with that, I'll hand off to Roy.
Thank you very much, Christopher. Thank you very much for joining in person and online. This is quite a unique event in the history of the Union, predominantly because this is going to be a dialogue. It's going to shatter the structure of this debating chamber. A little bit about myself. I'm the founding director of Undiscovered Country, and we've been working in peace education for about 40 years. And we use diagnostic tools, technology, and peace pedagogy in our work. What you're about to see is a combination of 40 years' work, but particularly 10 years' work, because about 10 years ago, I was in Texas in America at a large conference. It lasted a week in Fort Worth with 850 other educators from around the world discussing what would a pedagogy of inclusion look like. And interestingly enough, I'm sorry to do this to you, Mr. President, because, you know, this is not how you do things at the Cambridge Union. Where do you come from?
I live in Dallas-Fort Worth, in Texas.
Thank you very much. So the fact that 10 years later we have a resident of Fort Worth who would have been, how old 10 years ago?
11.
11 years old. 11 years old. He's sitting here. And actually this is quite significant because we do not know the impact of our actions. We do not have to have a large group of people and around us, and we have some people online. But Margaret Mead, back in the 1960s, had a conversation with James Baldwin. It was a very important conversation. In fact, it was called, as you would expect for the 1960s, called a rap on race. Isn't that great? A rap on race. And she said, never underestimate the power of a small group of people to change the world, because indeed it's the only thing that ever has. So this small group in this room are the right people for tonight, so thank you for turning up. When we work with organizations, schools and businesses, we profile the whole organization on what the conflict looks like. And this is a school that we've worked with, has been the basis and inspiration for the work you're going to see tonight. And this was taken about 18 months, 2 years ago, before we started the peace work with them. You can see where the hotspots are in terms of the conflict in that school. This is, went back to work with the students in December last year. This works. This works. It is not an interesting suggestion of what we should look like in terms of peace education. We are going to share with you processes and practices that work, particularly the work that Rosina is doing in her schools. So I base this on positive psychology. The inspiration for my work is a friend of Maslow, Abraham Maslow. His name's Clarence Graves, Dr. Clare Graves, and he said the psychology of the mature human being is an unfolding, emergent, oscillating, spiraling process marked by the progression of older, lower-order systems to newer, higher-order systems as man's existential problems change. Basically, what that means is, as the world changes, we need to change with it. And I think there's never been a moment in history where we have to return to Baldwin's message. And that's why we're here today, is we're launching the Baldwin and Buckley debate for another 60 years, and you're going to be part of that. What Graves did, he looked at the biology, the psychology, and the sociology of systems, and we build that into our work, but also bring in mythology and storytelling. So the question is, why are we using drama, and why are we using dialogue? Well, the reality is, most people will engage in a play, in a film, in a dance, and know that they're connected with it, but can't particularly explain it. And from a neurological point of view, this is a function of your right hemisphere. Anyone been in a space where I know this, but I can't articulate it. I get it, but I can't tell you why. And that's part of our evolutionary process. We base our work on this framework of Johann Galtung, and he said everything is in conflict, and it's our response to it that's important. If we respond to it wisely, we can make that conflict constructive, and if we don't, it's going to be destructive. If it's destructive, it can lead to violence. And that violence can be direct, physical, verbal, attacking, or it can be indirect, such as the institutions, the structures, who's in, who's out, who's right, who's wrong, and also the culture. If it's constructive, it can lead to peace, and that peace can be positive, which can lead to social justice, or it can lead to negative peace. And I would argue most of our school systems at the moment are embedded in negative peace. They're managing the teaching and learning because they're keeping the violence, the physical and verbal, under control. But what about the institutional? What about those kids that don't feel engaged for a whole variety of reasons? And what about the processes which excludes others who may be just developing a little bit later? If you're streaming in a secondary school, you start off at 11, you're going to be there until you're 15. So we want to explore that. And the way that we work, we are quite unique in the theatre of peace, is we use our profiling tools to assess the actors. So we want to know when they turn up, are they a positive peacemaker or have they become a bit of a saviour? Are they a servant leader or are they a bit of a martyr? Are they a peacekeeper or are they just a bystander? Or are they a warrior or a dictator? And we put the actors through the same process that we put business leaders through, school communities, and we start by profiling them. And this is one here. Here she is. This is Eleanor. Eleanor, who would you tell us a bit about your character?
So I play Max in The Missing Piece, and Max almost acts like a bridge between the audience and the actual situation that's going on, as it is a school project that this is based on, and Max comes in to just jump in and read lines and fill in for someone who's not turned up for rehearsal. So they kind of act as a bit of a bridge for these people who are in the knowing and the people who are watching. So all the questions that Max asks are questions that the audience would ask.
And in the play you'll notice that Max takes on the role of Baldwin.
Reads into lines of Baldwin because someone didn't turn up.
But also the argument we're now saying, it's in the past, the idea that 9%, you'll see on your sheets, 9% of the population were being excluded. And he's talking about the black population of America. Now the argument we can see in America, it's not just the black population, it's women. Mm-hmm. It's people who are divergent or different in any way. And I do not think that the argument of Baldwin and Buckley that was so prevalent in 1960, we're having it again, but with even greater intensity in the same space 60 years later. So we are pracademics, not academics, which means we put it into practice. So we profile all the actors, get them to understand what they bring to the rehearsal process and how they're going to use that conflict creatively. The profiles, by the way, are not a personality type that you're saying, where are you at the moment? What's going on with you? What's going on in terms of your relationship with time, others, and the environment? We then, and you'll notice, there's a lot of food in our rehearsals because we cook, we eat, we talk, and this might seem a bit strange, but actually, if you can get food and stories in your groups, you'll work with that person. Mm-hmm. If you don't share food with them, you probably won't work with them. And then finally, after about 2 or 3 days, we get them, now that they understand the process, we get them to do their profiles again, but in character. And then that gives us a framework of how we're going to work. At essence, the dialogue, why it's about dialogue and debate, is both dialogue and debate need just 4 questions. And that's what we would like to invite you in to explore. What would happen if you answered these 4 questions honestly? And the 4 questions is, what are we doing here? So I think what we're doing here is going to watch the play, the film of the play, and then we're going to engage in a conversation. What did you see? What did you hear? Why this is important, I think I've explained that. Who's involved in it? Well, we've got people online. Anyone from any interesting exotic locations?
Yes, we have got someone coming in from California and someone coming in from Germany at the moment.
And Cumbria.
And Cumbria.
Excellent.
Woohoo!
New York, Paris, London, Penrith. How are we going to work? So we're going to watch it. Rosina's going to share a little bit about the work that she does. And we want you to watch it with an idea of, once we've finished it, come up with a question. And some of you will have a question about, tell us about the process. Some of you will have a question about, the profiling. Some of you will have a question about the performance. It doesn't matter. What we want to experience is what would happen if you had a group of people who've never met each other and created a safe space for a conversation. That's all we're doing here. That's all we're doing. So, what you will hear, James Baldwin said several times in his presentation, people act based upon their systems of reality. And what we do is work through this is our rehearsal process. We work with simple systems. Here's your lines. There's a stage. Don't knock anything over. Keeping it simple. This is peacekeeping. We then move to more complicated systems. What are the relationships between the characters? And then we do the chaotic. We do the deep rehearsal. And then we do the performance, which is complex. And how this works is we ask the actors as people, what's going on with you as a person? Where's your inner conflict? Now, some people, in another iteration of this that I created a few years in Cambridge, we focused on inner peace and outer peace, but I've kind of gone upstream. I think I've seen the damage that peacekeepers can do to the world because they are so committed to peace, they allow conflict just to rage around them. And sometimes you've got to go upstream and we've got to deal with the conflict at source. So what's going on in your own life, inner conflict? What's going on in your conflict with others? What's going on in your conflict with the community in the world? And most importantly, what's going on with your conflict with the planet and the cosmos? And so we're not going to go through this now, but you'll notice that those 4 questions can appear at any point in any of those quadrants, and that really makes a performance. But what we're going to focus on now, just before we watch the film, I'm going to hand over to Rosina, but we look at the complex adaptive system, ecological piece, and what is our relationship like with the planet? Do we have a pedagogy? Do we have a curriculum that actually looks at our relationship with the planet as something deeply important? And we do. Unfortunately, it's called the biophilic education system, and the expert on it is just there. So, would you like to?
Thank you. Thanks, Rory. I'm Rosina Dorelli, and the founder of the Da Vinci Life Skills. It's a curriculum and an assessment model. So I've been working with Roy, he's on our advisory board, helping build a new pedagogy, a new philosophy for education, and a curriculum that meets that. So I'm originally, actually artist and furniture designer, but after that, a design technology teacher in secondary school. And I was teaching a thing called biophilic design. I don't know if any of you have heard of biophilic design. Biophilia is the love of life. And biophilic design has been heralded as an idea of how we create sustainable cities and environments where human beings and the whole of our ecosystem can thrive. And so what they looked at was environments where human beings thrive. And they found that we need organic structures, daylight, natural materials, things like that. And when we create environments like this, research has shown that our physical health improves, our psychological well-being, and even our cognitive function improves. And one thing we thought about when we founded this company was how can we bring that concept into education? It seemed like a good name for an education system of the future. In fact, it's a concept, biophilia is a concept that could go into any field, really. So we could have biophilic farming, and let's see a biophilic future. So a biophilic education system where human beings thrive as part of their ecosystem seemed like a very good idea. So we built a framework. We looked at what the problems were within the current system, and our main sort of points and the main problems we came up with was, in fact, questions that I would pose to you is whether you think our current education system is inclusive, sustainable, or ethical. And we doubted all 3 of those. And there's areas where it really, I don't feel like it fits those things. We have an outdated system. It hasn't really been updated since the Industrial Revolution, and we're going through a massive technological revolution, which is pulling the rug out from the system right now. Yes?
Sorry to interrupt. Are we only talking about the UK system of education?
Not particularly, no, we're talking about global. This is a global issue. This is global, but I mean, I'm based here, so we have my bias is here. I mean, we have to be aware of our bias, and my bias is obviously in design, technology, and the arts. But this is a global problem. I've been to many educational conferences globally in the last 4 years, and this is a topic of debate globally, that things need to change.
Ignoring the difference between a paid-for education and a state paid-for education.
It's all the same issue, because what we're talking about is human beings being valued for who they are. And what's happened in our capitalist society is it's become an extraction system. We've tried to, it's not been built by someone that's not mean and nasty and tried to create a horrible thing. It's been designed by people that were trying to make it fair, so they tried to make it the same, and that's the middle point there, is that we've created a one-size-fits-all model to make it fair for everybody. The problem is it's not fair because not everybody's the same. And you can't judge a goldfish by its ability to climb a tree. This is what that cartoon is about, and that's the famous quote, because it's just not, that's not a fair system of evaluation. And we're ending up with a growing mental health crisis and a skill shortage, which is a big problem, not just in the UK, but globally, because we've narrowed our system. And I don't know if it's always been narrowed, but I mean, it's a pretty narrow system of what we assess, because we tend to assess what's easy to assess rather than what's of value. So we start valuing what's easy. And that's the other problem, is it's becomes what's easy to test. And therefore, those people that don't fit within that very narrow band of being able to sit a written exam in a very short space of time in a very stressful situation, if you're not able to do that specific thing, which is a kind of an odd skill for most jobs. There's not many jobs that need you to sit in a cold, dusty hall and write an essay and remember a load of dry facts. It's an odd thing to be testing the whole of humankind on and saying, well, you're of value and you're not. This is where I stress that I do not believe it to be ethical to say to a child, you are a failure because you can't do that. And I've witnessed many kids coming out of school, failing exams, feeling like failures. And there aren't any rites of passage. If you look at indigenous cultures and you look at rites of passage, every rite of passage in our ancestry, they help the whole community. They help all of those teenagers get through to adulthood through a rites of passage. We are systematically failing a third of kids, and our education system moves boundaries to make sure we still fail a third of kids. That is unethical, in my opinion.
And when we look at the film and we move into the group dialogue afterwards, the question is, are we confusing being fair with being equal? And how do we create a space that isn't artificial for that, but is based more upon traditional and human-centered approaches?
Exactly. No, exactly. And so what relates this to Baldwin and Buckley debate and to the film that we're about to watch is when you start having systems that are unfair and don't give people the opportunity to succeed, then you're creating conflict and violence, and you can't have that peace that we're looking for. So we need to look at human beings and ask every child, who are you, what are you interested in, how can we support you as an individual, what can we do to best support your skills, your knowledge, your interests, and enable you to be the best you can be, rather than saying you need to fit inside this box and we will bash you until you do. And so we're looking at a change, and the way, this is our model of a more holistic vision for education, where it is inclusive, it is ethical and sustainable, and we start looking at what makes a human human, things that aren't AI or robotics, things that, it's very hard to read from here, but things like curiosity and imagination, the ability to fail and get back up again and be resilient, the ability to belong and have culture. AI doesn't have these things, but we do. So maybe we should start an education system now which really focuses on those things that can't be replicated by the technology that we're building at a very fast rate. What we've done, just to say that needs to be part of a local ecosystem. We need to start thinking in systems and how we are stewards of this world, and to survive and to make it sustainable, that we have that awareness of the self and where the self belongs, and have that responsibility for our environment, not just locally, but also globally. So yeah, this is our sort of key elements that we came up with for biophilic education, this new pedagogy. And so we were looking at entrepreneurship, using technology, but also having one hand in the soil as well. So we need to be able to know how to grow food and cook and do practical things, as well as use technology as a positive tool. Allow learning to be more transdisciplinary, having inspiring environments, use project-based learning and collaborative communication. So we really look at bringing the whole community into schools, being more creative, and, dare I say, bring love, empathy, and compassion into schools. And what we've done is create a curriculum, which we're currently testing in schools. We have schools in the UK, and we have schools abroad that are testing this right now. So we've just started doing that in trials. So we're trying with, we have a set of 5 pathways, and we have a set of projects that students do. And what's exciting about it is it's not replacing the current system. We're not suggesting that. What we're suggesting is project-based learning can be the exciting applied part of the school that takes all the traditional subjects, which are all being taught the same. We don't have to change too much. We keep the same system we currently have. What we're saying is, why don't we have a pathway within that system that is about applying that knowledge so kids know why I'm learning it. I'm learning this because I'm going to use it in this project. And we have real-world projects that actually make sense, and they get to experience that knowledge through all of their senses. And so this is our our project that's happening, and we're trying to change the world a little pebble at a time.
I have done this with schools, and I did this with a really great school in Walthamstow School for Girls. And we asked all of the departments to turn up with their learning objectives for the term. This is a very simple example, just to reinforce what you're saying. And we just said, okay, so these are all what you're doing. Who would like to be part of this project? And so we had technology, we had English, we had maths, we had art. And we said, okay, so if you could all lay out what your learning objectives are, and then can we just agree what a project would be for that? It took us a couple of hours. And they came up with identity. It was for Year 7 girls in Walthamstow. And it was brilliant. And it meant that every time they went to their class, their subjects, they did it as a project. But it meant that when they left maths and went to English, they were still revising maths. When they went into English, they were still revising technology, because they could see it as a link. And the feedback from the staff and the kids was that this is raised engagement, raised attainment, for the simple reason they didn't see the silos, they saw it as a project. Because their final project, in all of our projects, and similar to yours, is it has to contribute to society. And what these young people did, they did it to raise awareness of and money for a community in Pakistan, actually, specifically. And it was remarkable. The feedback from the maths teacher, who was very reluctant to the idea, oh, really, I've got maths, she said, we said your task is you've got to show maths. And by the way, they came up, we're going to do an online gallery of the self-portraits of the girls. And she said, oh, actually, we could organize with this space. You can calculate so many rectangles. And she totally bought into it. And what this did wasn't just bringing in the subject areas. It was releasing the creativity of the teachers. And it made their jobs easier. It made staff pupil engagement easier, because there was a key purpose. I just wanted to emphasize that.
Yeah, no, and I think that's a big part of it too, is allowing teachers to be the whole human being that they can be and share learning with students. So when I go into a class, I don't necessarily know all the knowledge, and I can come in there and say, I don't know necessarily the answers. Let's find out, how would we do that? And that's more exciting as a teacher, and it's more exciting for the students when it's like reading a novel, the Agatha Christie. You don't just go to the end and tell someone, oh, it's all right, we've worked it all out. This is the murderer, and it did it in the, the library with it. You want to find it, and you want to have the questions, and you want the journey. And the learning is the journey that's fun, and the discovery is fun. So discovering it with students is what's fun about learning. And that's just what we're trying to do. And our assessment is looking, we have 70 skills that we assess across 7 core skill domains. And we allow that ability for students to be valued for who they are in a plethora of different, not just can you write an exam. So yeah, I will pass it back to you, but I think you wanted to look at, this is how we lay out our projects, which is very similar to Roy's model. I'll pass it over to you. All of our projects fit within this 9-skill spiral. So we start, go through the why, and I'll let you continue.
No, it's fine. Because what we will see is, and it is like stating the blinking obvious, everything comes down to these simple 4 questions. If you are able to answer these 4 questions, you're able to engage in your intuitive self, your creative self, your spiritual self, your rational self. And those stages of ideation and teamwork and self-management and strategy are the same levels as Claire Graves of survival, tribal, self, order, enterprise, community, interconnected, interdependent, servant leadership, and fully formed human. And this is, the only remarkable thing about this is, it's so obvious, but you need to be able to look at it across just the strand of your own lived experience and across your own system of reality. So when we watch the film now, listen to what the young people are saying. Listen to how they respond to what they are saying. Because in the play, one of the characters is reading, the part of the character of Max, as I was saying, is reading these lines for the first time. And the way that applied theatre works is, it's a stimulation for a conversation. You will get something out of this that no one else in the room is getting, and that's important. That's what's important. So we're more curious about stimulating a conversation, a question. This will go on for about 30 minutes. Enjoy it, and then we'll take a few questions afterwards.
I had a question.
Yes.
What is the age range or grade range for the curriculum that you are working with, and have you worked in any schools in the U.S.?
I haven't yet worked in the US, but we actually been working, at the moment we started in middle school, because there seemed to be the void and the place that we were able to get in. It's very hard to get in high school at the minute, and middle school is safer because it's not dealing with exams. But we are actually looking now at high school. I'm starting a high school here in Cambridge in September, and we also have a primary model as well. But the real scaffolded projects are within middle school. But yes.
So you kind of jumped ahead a little bit, which is great, because we're working with Russell Sage College in New York State. Okay. And after this is just the first of many events that are going to be taking place next year. And for those of you who are interested, Russell Sage College and our colleagues in America, going back to Texas, we are hosting 6 conversations inspired by this on the Become model, which is the competencies of global citizenship of bravery, energy, creativity, openness, motivation. And we are actively going to be working with colleagues from within states, particularly within New York, because that's where my co-writer is based. My co-writer is a black attorney, young man who we trained together as actors. How he got from an actor to an attorney, that's a whole different story. But he contacted me a few years ago during COVID. He's working for the district attorney's office in Minnesota. And a file landed on his desk. It was George Floyd. And he called me. He's in tears, my friend. And he said, do you know what? He said, do you know what's awful about this? He says, yes, it's awful that the guy died. And yes, he said, but the reason that it's so awful, he said, people are watching it for 2 reasons. Someone caught it on camera, and it's COVID. He said, we have 3 to 4 deaths of young, mainly male men in our community every month. Every month. And what we see, and you'll see this in the play, as the character says, what was happening in 1965 in Cambridge? What was happening in America in 1965 to warrant this debate here? And there's a lot of things happening. And you'll see in the film how they introduce this. Because remember, this is a film for young people to be aware of what's happening. And what we see now, in terms of the debate, was, has the American dream been at the cost of the African American? Well, now it's as the American dream at the cost of people that don't fit a very particular system. Let's watch the film. And
Can I just say before you start the film, just how important this, I mean, what's lovely about this film is it's students embodying knowledge. And they're putting on a play about a debate, which is exactly what we're talking about here. It's about transdisciplinary learning, and theatre is one of those ways that we can embody knowledge and really understand it. And that's what I think is important too, to take from this kind of link of what we're doing.
Perfect.
It is a terrible thing for an entire people to surrender to the notion that 1/9 of its population is beneath them. And until that moment, until the moment comes when we, the Americans, we, the American people, are able to accept the fact that I have to accept, for example, that my ancestors are both white and black, that on that continent we are trying to forge a new identity for which we need each other, and that I am not a ward of America. I am not an object of missionary charity. I am one of the people who built the country. Until that moment, there is scarcely any hope for the American dream, because the people who are denied participation in it, by their very presence, will wreck it. And if that happens, it's a very grave moment for the West. Welcome, everybody. Today, we're going to take you on a journey back in time to a pivotal moment in American history, a time of great divide and racial tension.
We're going to introduce you to two men who stood on opposite sides of this divide.
James Baldwin and William F. Buckley Jr. Our play looks at the importance of dialogue to give people a voice to address the issue of othering in wider society.
The story begins with two sixth formers and friends since primary school, Carter
That's me.
and Max.
That's me.
Arriving in their school hall. It's the end of the day, and Carter is explaining to Max why they are using the Cambridge Union as the setting for their exam before they leave school.
We're using a debate from the Cambridge Union as the focus for our last Global Citizen Scholar exam. Our group, me, Khalil and Sophie, are combining history, English, drama and technology for our project. Mr. Graham thinks that going back in time to when racism and violence were more explicit would be a great framework for our final group project.
Still relevant though, isn't it?
That's exactly why we're focusing on this. Baldwin talks about 10% of the population of America being denied a voice back then.
Yeah, but if you look at the world today, I think it's closer to 50%, maybe even more. Think about it. If you are a woman, a person of colour, queer, neurodivergent, or outspoken against prejudice in any way, some people see you as dangerous, something to be feared.
Exactly. That's why we wanted to do this. Plus, Mr. Graham is great at not letting our passion get in the way of our purpose.
Oh, he loves the GCSEs more than we do.
I know. Can you believe it's been 10 years since the government introduced the Global Citizen curriculum? Mad to think there was a time when years of school came down to a 2-hour exam.
Yeah, and with my neurospicy brain, the thought of sitting still for 2 hours sounds like hell. Let alone write a paper in that time. Oh, I'm so happy this is split into 3.
Yeah, if we were born just a year earlier, I would have had no chance at high grade. I mean, we need at least 70% in all 3 areas to pass. It's not easy, but it's doable.
Yeah, but if we pass this one, I'll get a scholarship to go to uni. And you can do your social enterprise work. Or is it apprenticeship? You keep changing your mind, Carter.
I know, but whatever I choose, I can do anywhere in the world. For free. For 4 years.
Mad.
Well, we are the big social experiment, aren't we? Could have gone really wrong.
The government's guinea pigs. How are you getting on?
Our presentation has changed a lot, but we think we're there. Thanks for coming to our run-through.
No problem. But seeing as my group has booked this space in an hour, can we get started?
I'm not sure where Sophie and Khalil are. They should be here by now. They usually arrive first.
Have they messaged you?
Oh, I missed this. Sophie sent it half an hour ago.
What's it say?
Something serious has happened and we will be late. We might not even make it.
Are they all right? Sorry, Carter, I can't hang about.
No, don't go, Max. Hang on. Will you test me? Sophie and Khalil have nailed their lines, but I'm still not quite sure of mine.
Sure. Who am I?
You are James Baldwin, African-American playwright, novelist, and civil rights activist. Friend of Martin Luther King and Malcolm X. Khalil is playing him. I'm playing William F. Buckley Jr., a white American conservative who had a very different view on race relations in America.
You don't want me to do an American accent, do you?
No, we're not doing accents. We don't want to do an impersonation, but figured we'd focus on the words themselves. The words they said then and the words we're saying now. It's about dialogue this time, not debate.
OK, cool.
We put together a 20-minute performance of what it would be like if the formal 1965 debate were an informal dialogue on a modern-day podcast called Past the Act, Present Drama, if Sophie and Khalil ever turn up.
I'm here.
So, where have you been? Is everything okay?
No, Khalil's not coming.
Why?
Carter, you were supposed to set everything up.
Are you okay? Why is Khalil not coming?
Just forget it. We've only got this space for an hour and I don't want to waste any more of my time. I'll read in for Khalil. Carter, just get into your position.
Max can stand in for Khalil. They were going to go through the lines with me anyway.
Have you learned your lines?
I know my lines. Suppose we should also sort the chairs and table out as well to calm Sophie down. We don't want her to have a hissy fit.
Will you two please get ready? Welcome to the Past Lives, Present Drama podcast, where we spill the tea on past dramas. We take you back in time to the world's greatest arguments, conflicts, and debates. This week, we have James Baldwin, a renowned civil rights activist. We also have William F. Buckley Jr., a conservative writer and public intellectual. For our new listeners, let me give you a little bit of a lowdown on our venue for today, the Cambridge Union. The Cambridge Union began after a drunken brawl between rival debating societies. After they hashed it out, they figured it made more sense to band together to form the Cambridge Union Society. The rules of the Cambridge debate are quite old-fashioned and really formal, so try and stay with me. First, there's a motion, an idea, statement, or policy. It begins this house, followed by the motion. Then you have the opening government that present the topic to be debated. Then you have the opening opposition, the initial argument against the motion. With me so far? After that is the closing government and the closing opposition who deliver the main argument on the motion. And if that still doesn't make sense, please check out our show notes for more information and just try to keep up for the next 20 minutes. The Union has seen many different people, like Winston Churchill, Archbishop Desmond Tutu, Emma Thompson, Robert De Niro, and even Stephen Hawking. Slay! Before we get stuck into the clash at Cambridge, I want to bring you our new segment, which we like to call, What in the Hell Was Happening Then? Well, racism and violence were rife. In August 1955, 14-year-old Emmett Till was killed in Mississippi for allegedly flirting with a white woman. His murderers were acquitted. The case gained national attention when photos of Till's beaten body were published. This created a national divide, with some feeling disgust and ashamed, while others celebrated. In December 1955, Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat to a white man in Montgomery, Alabama. This led to a bus boycott that declared that bus segregation laws were unconstitutional. To this day, this single act of defiance by this quiet 42-year-old seamstress are still celebrated. Then, in September 1957, the governor of Arkansas called in the National Guard to bar 9 black students from attending an all-white high school in Little Rock. The federal troops were eventually threatened and the National Guard were withdrawn. If you're tuning in on YouTube, you'll be able to see the calm, quiet, dignified face of a young black girl being screamed at by a group of white people. February 1960, 4 black college students in North Carolina staged a sit-in at a segregated Woolworths lunch counter protesting their denial of service. This led to tens of thousands of students performing similar sit-ins all across the country. 2 years later, in October 1962, the National Guard were called in to put down riots, allowing James Meredith into the University of Mississippi as their first black student. Come on, James. Then, in August 1963, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. gave his I Have a Dream speech during the Civil Rights March in Washington, D.C. on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial. There were more than 200,000 people there. That's the same amount as Glasgow punters every year. Imagine all of them squeezing round the pyramid stage. Now picture that happening in Washington, D.C. It started to feel like things were finally looking up. And then they weren't. In November 1963, President John F. Kennedy, an advocate for civil rights, was assassinated. Less than a year later, a civil rights bill was passed by the United States Congress outlawing discrimination in jobs, voting, and accommodations. However, on the 21st of February 1965, 3 days after the debate were about to begin, Malcolm X, a great friend of James Baldwin, was assassinated. Now you're all caught up on what in the hell was happening then. Let's begin. So today we are joined by James Baldwin and William F. Buckley Jr. to debate the motion. Has the American dream been at the cost of the African American? James Baldwin, black, author, playwright, with a focus on themes of race, love, civil rights, and the need for moral integrity. William Buckley, white, author, academic, who created the National Review magazine. Welcome to you both.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Thank you for your kind invitation.
We are here today to discuss the motion. Has the American dream been at the expense of the African American? This topic is an important one. As you know, in our last episode, we spoke to current Cambridge students, David Haycock, who supported the motion, and Jeremy Burford, who was against the motion. The response we received in social media and the national press was greatly divided and very intense. We've never had such a response to a debate, and this week, in part 2, we are expecting no less of a response. Mr. Baldwin, you are here in favour of the motion. What are your thoughts?
Good evening. I find myself, not for the first time, in the position of a kind of Jeremiah. I don't disagree with Mr. Burford that the inequalities suffered by the African American population of the United States have hindered the American dream. Indeed, it has. I quarrel with some other things he has to say. The other deeper element of a certain awfulness I feel has to do with one's point of view. I have to put it that way. One's sense, one's system of reality. It would seem to me the proposition before the House is the American dream at the expense of the African American, or the American dream is at the expense of the African American. Is the question hideously loaded? One's reaction to that question has to depend on where you find yourself in the world, what your system of reality is. It depends on assumptions which we hold so deeply so as to be scarcely aware of them. A white South African or Mississippi sharecropper or a Mississippi sheriff or a Frenchman driven out of Algeria all have a system of reality which compels them to act. For example, the Mississippi or Alabama sheriff, who really does believe, when he's facing an African-American boy or girl, that this woman, this man, this child must be insane to attack the system to which he owes his entire identity. Of course, to such a person, the proposition which we are here to discuss tonight does not exist.
Did you hear that, Carter? If someone doesn't see that what they are doing is in any way offensive, then when someone takes offence to what they're doing, it can be confusing for them.
Well, I am confused, Sophie. I don't know what you're talking about. Say what you've got to say, Sophie.
Really?
Yes.
In front of your friend?
Yes.
In front of your they, them, gender diverse, socially and politically outspoken friend?
What's that got to do with anything? Why are you bringing me into this?
Hey, Max. Do you know why we called our group the Peace Ambassadors? Because we all share a passion for peace. We all wanted to be ambassadors for peace. Right, Carter?
Right.
For the last 10 years, every single one of our projects was about positive change. We didn't want to be contributors to the violence. Isn't that right, Carter?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Do you like my hair, Carter?
What?
My hair. Do you like it? It's not too messy.
What's going on?
What?
Hashtag Black Lives Matter but too many braids.
Soph,
Hashtag white lies have better hair.
This is a mistake. I didn't mean to like this post.
What happened?
Hashtag messy hair, hashtag Zulu. That's not going to hurt me. That's not going to hurt me at all.
I swear to you, it was a mistake. I would not do that to you.
You did do that to me, Carter.
I'm sorry.
Saying sorry and being sorry are two very different things. I can't do this, I'm sorry.
Sophie, wait. Why don't we just run it through and then see how you feel? Right now, you have a choice. You can either walk out or work it out. Isn't that what your piece is about? Break the cycle of violence, use the conflict, not ignore it. Dialogue, not debate. At the bare minimum, this would be a great journal entry.
Let's just get on with it.
Great. Thanks, Soph.
I'm not doing this for you, Carter. Mr. Buckley, would you like to respond to Mr. Baldwin's point?
It seems to me that of all the indictments Mr. Baldwin has made of America here tonight, and in his copious literature of protest, the one that is the most striking involves the refusal of the American community to treat him other than as a black man. The American community, almost everywhere he goes, treats him with a kind of unction, a kind of satisfaction at posturing carefully before his flagellations of our civilization, that indeed quite properly commands the contempt which he so eloquently showers upon it. It is impossible, in my judgment, to deal with the indictment of Mr. Baldwin unless one is prepared to deal with him as a white man, unless one is prepared to say to him, Mr. Baldwin, the fact that your skin is black is utterly irrelevant to the arguments that you raise. The fact that you sit here, as is your rhetorical device, and lay the entire weight of the African-American community on your own shoulders is irrelevant to the argument that we are here to discuss.
Mr. Baldwin.
I have to speak as one of the people who have been most attacked by what we now must call here in the Western or European system of reality, what white people in the world, what we call white supremacy. I hate to say it here, comes from Europe. It's how it got to America. Whatever one's reaction to this proposition is, has to be the question of whether or not civilizations can be considered equal, or whether one civilization has the right to overtake and subjugate and to destroy one another. Now, what happens when that happens? Leaving aside all the physical facts that one can quote, leaving aside rape or murder, leaving aside the bloody catalogue of oppression which we are in one way too familiar with already, what this does to the subjugated, the most private, the most serious thing this does to the subjugated is to destroy his sense of reality. This means, in the case of the African American, born in that glittering republic, and the moment you are born, since you don't know any better, every stick and stone and every face is white. And since you have not yet seen a mirror, you suppose that you are too. It comes as a great shock, around the age of 5 or 6 or 7, to discover that the flag to which you have pledged allegiance has not pledged allegiance to you. It comes as a great shock to discover that Gary Cooper killing off the Indians, when you were rooting for Gary Cooper, that the Indians were you. It comes as a great shock to discover that the country, your birthplace, to which you owe your life and your identity, has not, in its entire system of reality, evolved any place for you.
The gravamen of Mr. Baldwin's charges against America is not so much that our civilization has failed him and his people, that our ideals are insufficient, but that we have no ideals.
Sorry to interrupt again, but what is a gravamen?
Oh, it's a legal term. It means the basic gist of a legal claim. In Latin, it means to weigh down. A bit like spending time with Carter.
Mr. Baldwin's charges against America are that our ideals rather are a sort of superficial coating we come up with at any given moment in order to justify whatever commercial or noxious experiment we are engaged in. Thus, Mr. Baldwin can write in his book The Fire Next Time, in which he threatens America.
When does Mr. Baldwin threaten America?
In The Fire Next Time, he threatens America with the necessity for us to jettison our entire civilization when he stated unequivocally that the only thing that the white man has that the black man should want, he said, is power. As I wrote a few years back in 1959 in my book Up From Liberalism, that blacks are not ready to rule themselves. democracy, to be successful, must be practiced by politically mature people, among whom there is a consensus on the meaning of life within their society. Mr. Baldwin is treated from coast to coast of the United States with a kind of unctuous servitude which goes beyond anything that was ever expected from the most servile black creature by a southern family.
So, what are you proposing?
I'm proposing to pay him the honour of saying to him, Mr. Baldwin, I'm going to speak to you without any reference whatever to those surrounding protections you are used to in virtue of the fact that you are black, and in virtue of the fact that your race has dreadfully suffered at the hands of my race. I'm going to speak to you as a fellow American, as a person whose indictments of our civilization are unjustified, as a person who, if his counsels are listened to, would be cursed by all of his grandchildren's grandchildren in virtue of what he actually seeks to bring down upon America in pursuit of his neurotic mission.
Mr. Baldwin.
The disaffection, the demoralisation, and the gap between one person and another only on the basis of the colour of their skin begins there and accelerates. Accelerates throughout a whole lifetime to the present when you realise you're 30 and are having a terrible time managing to trust your countrymen. By the time you are 30, you have been through a certain kind of mill. And the most serious effect of this mill, you have been through, again, not the catalogue of disaster, the policemen, the taxi drivers, the waiters, the landlady, the landlord, the banks, the insurance companies, the millions of details 24 hours a day, which spell out to you that you are a worthless human being. It is not that. It's by the time you've begun to see it happening in your daughter or son or your niece or nephew are 30 by now, and nothing you have done helped them to escape the trap. But what is worse than that is that nothing you have done, nothing you can do, will save them from meeting the same disaster. Let me put it this way, that from a literal point of view, the harbours and the ports and the railroads of this country, the economy, especially of the southern states, could not conceivably be what it has become if they had not had, or still do not have, cheap labour. I am stating very seriously, and this is not an overstatement, I picked the cotton. I carried it to the market. And I built the railroads under someone else's whip for nothing. For nothing. 40 years ago, when I was born, the idea of a black man and a white man discussing race on equal terms was unimaginable. I grew up believing the false narrative that Africa had no history and that I was a slave saved by Europe.
Mr. Baldwin, in his book The Fire Next Time, states quite clearly that the only thing that the white man has that the black man should want is power. It is how the black community strives to gain this power that is of concern to the white community.
When I was growing up, I was taught in American history books that Africa had no history and neither did I. That I was a slave about whom the less said, the better. Who had been saved by Europe and brought to America. And of course, I believed it. I didn't have much choice. Those were the only books there were. Everyone else seems to agree that if you walk out of Harlem, ride out of Harlem, downtown, the world agrees that what you see is bigger, cleaner, whiter, richer, safer than where you are. They collect the garbage. People can obviously pay their life insurance. The children look happy, safe. You're not. And you go back home and it would seem that, of course, it is an act of God that this is true, that you belong, where white people have put you. It is only since the Second World War that there has been a counter-image in the world. That image could not come about through any legislation on the part of any American government, but through the fact that Africa was suddenly on the stage of the world and Africans had to be dealt with in a way that they had never been dealt with before. This gave an African American, for the first time, a sense of himself beyond a savage or a clown.
A savage or a clown? Mr. Buckley?
The primary question before the House, as posed by the larger attitude taken by Mr. Baldwin, is whether or not our civilization has shown itself so flawed as the result of the failure of its response to the African-American problem of the United States that it ought to be jettisoned. No, I suggest that anybody who argued, as it may have been argued in this very House 125 years ago, the very fact that Jews and Catholics were not given the vote, were not allowed to vote in England as late as 1828, suggested English civilization ought to have been jettisoned. I suggest the other possibility ought to be considered, that precisely the reason they did get the vote is because English civilization was not jettisoned. That the whole point of our philosophical concern ought never to be to make that terrible fault that is made so frequently that we should so immanentize our own misgivings as to rush forward to jettison and to overthrow our civilization because we do not live up to its higher ideals. But meanwhile, I am saying to you that the engines of concern in the United States are working. The presence of Mr. Baldwin here tonight is in part a reflection of that concern.
Are they? Are the engines of equality and opportunity, acceptance and understanding really running smoothly? Mr. Baldwin?
One of the great things that the white world does not know, but I think I do know, is that black people are just like everybody else. One has used the myth of the African American and the myth of colour to pretend and to assume that you are dealing essentially with something exotic, bizarre, and practically, according to human laws, unknown. Alas, that is not true. We are also mercenaries, dictators, murderers, liars. We are human too. What is crucial here is that unless we manage to establish some kind of dialogue between these people, whom I pretend have paid for the American dream, and those other people who have not achieved it, we will be in terrible trouble.
Let me just say this. There is no instant cure to the race problem in America, and anybody who tells you that there is a charlatan and ultimately a boring man. Boring precisely because he's then speaking in the kind of abstractions that do not relate to the human experience. The trouble in America where the African-American community is concerned is a very complicated one.
I agree with you, Mr. Buckley. It is complicated. Indeed, it is so complex and chaotic, it needs a simple, shared understanding of what connects us and what dream we share. Is the dream one of kindness and equality imagined by the Reverend Martin Luther King, or the American dream, where the success of the few is at the cost of the many? The distraction from this reality that is fed to the compliant and fearful majority is the vilification and demonization of a minority group. We can see this pattern in all conflicts throughout time. It is a terrible thing for an entire people to surrender to the notion that 1/9 of its population is beneath them. And until that moment, until the moment comes when we, the Americans, we, the American people, are able to accept the fact that I have to accept, for example, that my ancestors are both white and black, that on that continent we are trying to forge a new identity for which we need each other, and that I am not a ward of America. I am not an object of missionary charity. I am one of the people who built the country. Until this moment, there is scarcely any hope for the American dream, because the people who are denied participation in it by their very presence will wreck it. And if that happens, it is a very grave moment for the West.
Thank you both for joining me. And I hope that our listeners today, and in the future, will find this dialogue helpful. I know that I have. There is no doubt that unless we, and future generations, have the wisdom and courage to actively engage and listen as individuals and communities, we will never break the cycle of violence. And Mr. Baldwin's prediction will become our reality. Finally, if you'd like some more drama in your life, join us next week, when we travel back to Palestine in 1948 to the beginning of the Arab-Israeli conflict. We'll be joined by the then British Prime Minister, Clement Attlee, and Ahmed Hilmi Abdi al-Baki, the first Prime Minister of the All-Palestine government. This promises to be one of the most dramatic exchanges in the history of the Past Lives, Present Drama podcast. Join us then.
Sophie Carter, that was brilliant.
Excuse me.
That was unexpected.
Can I say one thing? You know why Carter's staying with Khalil, right?
No.
It's really bad at Carter's place. He shares a room with his 2 younger brothers and there's nowhere for him to work. His mum's new boyfriend is a bully, always on Carter's case. And since the boyfriend has moved in, he has his mates over, smoking and drinking most nights. Carter wasn't sleeping. Khalil and his parents gave him a place to crash. Somewhere safe, where he could focus on the lead up to exams, get away from the madness. These exams are so important to Carter. So I don't think he would do anything to intentionally screw things up.
I didn't know that.
Soph, he feels so isolated right now. And he needs to know he belongs somewhere.
Why are boys like this? Why would he want to belong to a bunch of misogynistic, racist mates anyway?
I don't know. But sometimes when you feel lost and alone, it's easier to be part of a group than be by yourself. Baldwin talked about people who do things because they think they're facing a greater danger than they are. That is not an acceptance of what they do, but an understanding of why they might do it. Now, I'm not saying what Carter did wasn't wrong or that he won't do it again. I don't know. But I think you could give him the benefit of the doubt.
Maybe.
Maybe, maybe not. But you could take a moment to see where he's coming from. Isn't that where peace starts? Not just shaking somebody's hand, but understanding somebody else and what they're going through. Start there. Forgiveness, if it comes later.
I called Khalil. He wants to talk to me. So does his mum and dad. He said they want us all to talk tonight over dinner. They want to hear my side of the story before they decide if I can continue to use the spare room. I feel sick. I'm not sure I can face them. Soph, again, I'm really sorry.
I know. I'm just tired. I'm tired of kids being attacked in school for no reason. I'm tired of kids ending their own lives and thinking that it's a good option. I'm tired of the constant violence in this world and I just want it to stop. I want there to be some type of peace. And not just for people that look like me and Mr. Baldwin, but for anybody who feels like they're being attacked and oppressed simply because of the body, place or family they were born into. I am sad and angry that people say one thing and do another. That's why I wanted to do this project. That's why I wanted to do it right. But if after all this time and working with you for so long and you can't see it, what's the point? I know that what you said was a mistake, but it still makes me angry. That's you and so many like you have to have it pointed out in front of you. That makes me sad. Talk to me tomorrow after you've spoken to Khalil and his parents and we can decide what to do next then.
What are you going to say to Khalil and his parents?
Don't know. I really don't know.
You're not a bad person, Carter.
Yeah, I'm definitely not brave or wise either. I have to go.
There's no such thing as a good person or a bad person. People make choices based on their reality. And the only way we can get to any kind of solution is to find common ground. Dialogue, not debate. Good luck, mate.
It is a terrible thing for an entire people to surrender to the notion that 1/9 of its population is beneath them. And until the moment comes when we, the Americans, we, the American people, are able to accept the fact that I have to accept, for example, that my ancestors are both white and black, that on that continent we are trying to forge a new identity for which we need each other, and that I am not a ward of America. I am not an object of missionary charity. I am one of the people who built the country. Until that moment, there is scarcely any hope for the American dream, because the people who are denied participation in it, by their very presence, will wreck it. And if that happens, it's a very grave moment for the West.
So, thank you very much. Now, normally, when we do the Theatre of Peace, we've got about 2 hours and sometimes a whole weekend to unpack that. We've got about 20 minutes. So, just if anyone's got any key questions they'd like to ask, and are there any questions online?
There are.
So we just start with the people online whilst you just warm up. Who's got a question?
Dale Hill has two.
Dale Hill.
Has two.
Okay.
Two questions. So it's put, how can we develop bravery and champion that it takes time to see results, doing right thing and holding nerve when the school inspection system still judges based on narrow trends of attainment?
Would anyone like to answer that? I mean, I'm quite happy to answer it, but actually the purpose of this...
representatives here.
No, I'm biased. I put it out there. So just put it again.
How can we develop bravery and champion that it takes time to see results, doing right thing and holding nerve when the school inspection system still judges based on narrow trends of attainment?
It's a good question, yeah.
I could say you challenge it.
You challenge it.
Microphone.
Oops, sorry.
Otherwise, he's not going to hear your reply.
Just so the people online can hear.
Okay, so I would say you challenge it in those situations when you're in those inspections. I think I left mainstream teaching because I had to challenge an Ofsted inspector who said my children with dyslexia should be doing maths, English, and all. I know that they shouldn't be doing maths and English, and they could do subjects like music and drama, and what's wrong with that? And I just challenged him and said, but what use is an F in English if he wants to be a poet? What an awful start. And yeah, I challenged it. And those ripples, if we challenge it whenever we see it.
It's interesting because I know the person who's asking this question, and he's one of the most challenging people on the planet. And challenging in terms of in favour of this. And Dale is extraordinary. What's the other question? Because it's obviously rhetorical. What's the other question? Try me asking.
If we are genuinely serious in intent to create a positive feeling of belonging in our communities, this approach feels like an opportunity for young voice to authentically shape the action needed.
We take that as a statement, but I think the purpose of the work that we do is to create a space for young people to have a voice and also to have that captured and shared. And when we do the work, whether or not it's theatre work, particularly, that's our shtick, getting young people in the space with clear parameters and a clear focus, the conversations can be extraordinary. And how do we embed this in our schools? We've got proof. Have a look at Calm Manor School, for example, in Leeds, secondary school, inner city school, 134 languages, brilliant school. We launched this as part of the Leeds Learning Alliance about 12 years ago, where every adult and every child and every Monday will come in small circles and check in. The senior leadership team will come in and they will sit in a circle and say, how are you doing? What's going on? This is what we're doing this week. Then all of the teachers, primary and secondary, all the feeder schools, sit in a circle. How are you feeling? What's going on? And what are we doing? And then every kid, 2 out of year 7, 8, 9, and 10, and 2 visiting kids from year 6. And they started to call themselves family. And they would check in on a Monday, check up on a Wednesday, check out on a Friday. Everyone's taught restorative approaches. They haven't had a permanent exclusion for 7 years. This is not rocket science, and the stuff that we're talking about isn't hypothetical. It's actually happening, and it's happening because we have teachers and leaders like yourself who are saying, that doesn't make any sense anymore. It might have in the 1950s, 60s, but the science is overwhelming, and at some point, we have to challenge a system when it's broken, because that's a kind and brave thing to do. Does anyone else got a question?
There's more questions.
Well, we've got 2
coming through.
ex-Ofsted members on our board as well that are helping build this new curriculum. It's usually a good sign, right?
We have within our network, we have experts, we have people who are practitioners, and we are at a point whereby we think we're at a tipping point in education, because the examples, the practical examples, are sufficient. What's it? Give me another question on that.
So
Who's this?
Laura Garrison-Brooke.
Oh, Laura. We have New York. No, Canada.
No,
yeah, Laura's from America, but she's just moved to Canada for reasons which are pretty obvious.
From Southern Ontario is where she's
Ontario.
joining.
Okay, thank you very much.
That's where she's joining from. So what she's put is how can we help people create a certain sense of spaciousness so they have the necessary space to connect to our shared humanity? I think that so much of our challenge comes from a place of fear and defensiveness.
I think I refer to my earlier question. You put it in the curriculum. You don't have a one-day training on global citizenship. You embed it in your curriculum as a space of safety and conversation and dialogue. It has to be part of the structure, because if it's not part of the structure, it will just slip off the edge. And we can do that. And by the way, the amount of time we waste in terms of exclusion and dealing with bad behavior can be just eradicated, for the most part, if we create space. Does anyone in the room have any questions or thoughts that they'd like to, let me just...
Well, I was just going to say that it's refreshing to hear you think that you're on sort of the precipice here in the UK. I would offer, as someone from the US, albeit one of the same states, California, in many respects, certainly those of us like myself who have worked in politics for a long time, these systems, specifically the educational system, was never built, A, to be fair,
No.
and B, to be truly a place of learning. There are those of us who believe it was a system that was built to condition kids who would then become adults to basically be used and for our energy to be, and talent and skill to be used and extracted for other purposes. And I think that that is still the case. And so when you talk about, this isn't rocket science, it is not rocket science. It is a matter of whether or not we value humanity, human life, children. And the last thing I'll say, and I hate to even say it because it's so horrific, but I think that we are learning from the Epstein files that children in particular are not only not valued, but are looked at as particularly expendable. And so hearing that, at least over here, there is a movement towards centering humanity, kids, a curriculum that really values and encourages the growth of the whole being, to get back to our creativity, which I believe is what we are all here to do, is refreshing, because what's going on that side of the ocean is
Can I come back to you a little bit on that? Because the reason we're here having these conversations are because of 3 Americans. We're here because of Baldwin and Buckley, who shifted his position somewhat later on in the year. We have to give him some credit. But also the work that we're doing. Claire Graves, who's an American, said we can see what's happening in our system. In the 1950s and 1960s, there are so many American voices saying this is just wrong. And there is an argument for, and again, if we had longer, the idea of our values, any of our values can be creative, or they can be excessive, and they can be destructive. And Ken Wilber, who's an interesting book on wholeness, which comes to what has happened to the American system, basically on Graves' ideas, saying one of our biggest criticisms is the excessive openness of community, and everyone is equal, and everyone has a voice. And that has been manipulated because people who need to have a really powerful argument and call people out don't want to upset other people. And therefore, we run the risk of being too kind, too community. And I personally think the peacemakers have created the space for real violence in our communities because their excessive niceness has allowed this kind of manipulation of our children and of our systems to take foothold.
But the good news is that there are people, I mean, we have lots of colleagues in America, and High Tech High is Californian, right? And so there are schools and there are a lot of people working in this movement that I'm working in that are in America. It's a global movement, which is encouraging.
I think probably, though, I would be curious about the schools that you're working with, if they are private schools. I think someone mentioned the difference between private and public, and I don't know how you define it over here, but private over there is you're paying for, a different kind, and oftentimes that experience is very different than the public school education, and we won't even talk about what they're doing with the Department of Education right now over there, trying to get rid of it.
The 6 conversations after this, I say we are launching a whole series of events in America and throughout Europe over the next year. And we are launching with our colleagues in the States, and we'll give you the link by the time we finish, to join us on further webinars with our colleagues in America saying this is happening, so that we can take the argument of Baldwin and Buckley. And by the way, the debate, just to clarify, that dialogue is actually their debate turned into a dialogue. My research and work at Cambridge is in knowledge, power and politics. And the best way to get a political idea across is to turn it into a story. Has anyone else got any thoughts, observations, or questions? Have you got a question or thought? Because you had a great one at the beginning. Okay. There you go, sorry.
Just building on your point, Roy, about fear and everyone having to be the same. So, and I'm not in education. So I'm in business and farming and food and technology, but I do a bit of education because I do DFE. But also at the end of the day, it is fear. So the fear of how do you break down the barrier of, especially with social media and this groupthink, that actually I need to be able to find that commonality. It's me, you, here in this moment. How do I understand? How do I seek to understand where you are? Because that very powerful point about where he said, she was judging him, and actually these are all the things that are going on in his life. And how often we judge people because we judge them from our perspective, we don't seek to understand. But how do you get to a situation where you have the confidence to actually ask that question, to engage maybe a difficult question, and ask something that may offend or may not offend? I might think it may offend, it may not offend that person, and get over that. So actually we start that dialogue rather than stay silent and just build those silos.
I think the answer to that is the structure, the pedagogic structure that you use and that we use, and that any teacher uses, is about creating a space where people feel they can be heard. It really is that. So what we're doing here and what the society is doing is creating a space for a few people to come into a space. These are the rules. This is what we're going to focus on. Let's have a conversation. Based upon a framework of being present, being kind, being up for the change, being open to be challenged, and then believing the evidence and be willing to have your mind changed and then doing something with it. It really is that simple, but it has to be done regularly. It has to be done regularly. I'm going to because of time, we say we would normally sort of unpack this. Has anyone got any other questions? Because otherwise,
can I say that we do talk a lot in school, and we give children the voice to be able to have these debates, and we discuss it, and we go through conflict resolution. And you come across arguments, and if there is such a thing as bullying that we face, and then we try and have that out. It's like we're always coming up against conflict, there's always difficulty, but if we can teach kids in school how to go through those resolutions and how to keep open dialogue and have more student voice, more student autonomy within schools rather than a dictatorial system. The problem is, as you say, it's been designed with it's a dictatorship school. There's a person at the front telling everybody what to do. You stay silent and I will tell you everything that you need to do. It's not a democracy at all. And what we're suggesting is maybe we could make it more of a democracy in schools and start training young people to have a voice and to start a dialogue and to be part of the conversation.
And I would add to that, because drama being taken out of the curriculum, and I'm biased and I make no apology for that. Oracy, drama, the space for story, and the skills to deal with conflict. That's why I say we need to engage actively with conflict, not to be fearful of it. Because if we are not exposed to it, then how do we manage it in our society? And Graves says here, I'm going to finish this quote from Graves. He says, he's not saying in this conception of adult behavior that one style of being or form of human existence is inevitably and in all circumstances superior to or better than the other form of existence, another style of being. So he's not saying it's not a simple hierarchy. The higher you go up, you've got to be able to sometimes get down to the basics, eating, sleeping, basic needs. But what he's going to say is, what I am saying is that when one form of existence ceases to be functional, and I think this is such an insightful point by Graves, he says if it's not working, if it isn't working, we have an obligation to do something about it. He said when it ceases to be functional for the realities of existence, then some other form, either higher up or lower down in the hierarchy, is a better form of living. And sometimes you need just to have some food, calm yourself down, have a bit of quiet. And he says, and I do suggest, and this is a key point for this debate, and I do suggest, however, and this I deeply believe is so, that for the overall welfare of total man's existence in this world, that's everyone in the world, not just one group, not just one culture, not just one country, over the long run of time, higher levels are better than lower levels. And the prime good of any society's governing figures should be to promote human movement up the levels of human existence. And I would argue since the 1950s, 60s, we have gone down the level of human development and not up. Technologically, we are up there. But as a humanity, we have resorted to tribalism, elitism, and fear.
We kind of left wisdom behind and rushed knowledge forward.
We've become hyper-rational according to certain sources. Has anyone got any points, or otherwise we're going to wrap up?
1 minute.
You have 1 minute.
You have 1 minute.
So let me just summarize this in a story, then, if I may. By the way, this story is accessible online, recorded by this fine actor here. Let's imagine that everyone is, this is the model we use when we teach. How do we contain all this? Imagine everyone is a house, 10-story clock tower, because those are the elements that make us human. Our relationship with time. So the first question you should be asking yourself is, what time is it? Are you focusing on the past? Are you focusing on the present? Are you focusing on the future? And the next question we ask in our work is, what room are you in? Are you in the what, why, who, and how room? And then the third one is, what chair are you on? Are you on the me chair or the we chair? And then what floor are you on? Are you on the survival, the tribal, the self, the order, the enterprise, the community, the interconnected, the global, the warriorship, or the fully formed human? And then the next question is, so what time do you need to focus on now in this lesson at this time? What room do you need to be in? What chair you need to be on? What floor do you need to be on? And then the final question is, and how are you going to get there? And that's our jobs. We give a framework, we use a rational, we give a structure, but we then show how to do that. And so I'll finish with this, back to our American colleagues. The big events that are going on in America, we're also going to be doing this in Europe. We may be doing a workshop in Paris. We're going to all the places Baldwin, hung out, frankly. And if you go to the POSED Consortium, we're having a series of POS education webinars between March and August. And if you go to that, you'll find out some more details. But I'm going to hand over back to the President. Thank you, Mr. President, for being there this evening. If you'd like to close this event.
And thank you so much, Roy, for guiding the event along today. As always, the debate and dialogue that we host in this chamber remains as relevant as ever. It's been a pleasure to collaborate with Undiscovered Country and Da Vinci Life Skills on this event. Please give them and yourselves a warm round of applause this evening.
Thank you.
You can find more information on the Cambridge Union by heading to cus.org, and you can find more information on Undiscovered Country's work by going to www.undiscoveredcountry.org.uk. And you can also find more information on Da Vinci Life Skills by going to davincilifeskills.com. Again, thank you all for joining myself, Roy, and Rosina this evening, and thank you to everybody who's played a large part in making this event happen tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.